Critics and listeners alike have praised saxophonist Glenn White for his innovative compositions and commanding presence. NextBop describes his work as grand, elegant, and even somber in some places, kind of perfect, while Jazz Weekly highlights a sophisticated mix of probing and intriguing original compositions. With a soulful, warm tone and a flair for blending tradition with modern textures, White's music has been called progressive jazz made accessible, and heavy with emotion with great power. His artistry, both as a composer and performer, continue to captivate audiences and push the boundaries of contemporary jazz. Glenn, good to see you. Happy Monday.
Thank you, and happy Monday to you as well. I appreciate it.
So, we're in the beginning of 2025, and can you talk a little bit about, some things that you're looking forward to this year musically? Any exciting things on the books? Type of music you're going to be, performing live, that sort of thing.
So, right now, I'm looking forward to, I guess, just playing more than anything else. But I have some rough sketches of some things I'd like to accomplish. Specifically, I've got, I don't know, about a half a dozen tunes that I've been performing for a while now, but I haven't recorded or done anything with, other than just like maybe a YouTube excerpt here and there, for like an Instagram post or something. But I've never actually just like recorded them. And I was thinking, given that nobody's really buying records anymore, like why not just do like a live stream thing in a studio, kind of like what Berganti does every week? And it could be a live stream. It could also be something that's put up on YouTube so that people can enjoy it later. And if I'm happy with, the quality of the sound, and my own playing, of course, then chopping each of those songs up and putting them into iTunes release or something like that.
It's so easy to put music out these days that,
Mm.
it's one of the, advances of being alive in 2025. Like I'll give you an example. Like I had someone filmed one of my gigs. I took the video. It wasn't even, it was just one video. I made it audio, mastered it, and released it. These things are,
Awesome. Yeah.
that's one of the cool parts about being today as a, but these are things, they may not be the best thing you want to present yourself with, but we got to get our music out there.
Yeah. Content is king, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, performing as a band leader and as a sideman in the jazz capital of the world, um, the great New York City. Are there,
Yeah.
how long have you been performing as a band leader?
I mean, if you're going to go all the way back since like the mid 90s, I always wanted to be a sideman. I never really wanted to be a band leader. It was never really, I mean, I just wanted to play. I wanted to play challenging music that I thought was interesting. Um, and I moved around. I've moved around quite a bit over the years. I'm from Phoenix, or Phoenix area. Um, but I lived in Denver for a couple of years and played around there. Um, I this is my third time living in New York. So of course I've been here since 2006 this time around. Um, but I went to grad school in Boston, went to NEC for a couple of years. I taught college in Alaska for a year. Um, and and so it's just been in terms of setting roots down and trying to really develop something and being part of a community. It's been an ongoing challenge for a lot for me. I'm also I wouldn't say agoraphobic, but I'm not the most social butterfly. I'll put it that way.
You see, you seem social with me, so I'm taking it as a compliment.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So I enjoy. I mean, I love being a part of a scene. It's my favorite thing about being alive, really, is community and interacting with people on that level. Um, but it's like a drug. I just want more of it all the time, and it's just never enough. So, but yeah, in terms of being a band leader, like. I feel like if I'm gonna just oversimplify it, I feel like the only reason I really started doing it initially was because there just wasn't enough going on. Like I was gigging, here and there, but not like steady with anybody. I was subbing with a few people. Um, and over a period of time, I think when I moved here in 2006, flutist Jamie Baum and I shared a practice room together, and she would, call me. We'd get together at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And so I started writing music for us to play. When you're doing sessions, everybody wants to play original music. Very few people want to just, play standards, or regardless of how interesting the tunes are, if they've already played them before, they're there to read something new and to be, have their minds kind of expanded in that way. Uh, and I particularly around, shortly after I moved here, I became really interested in the alto flute. So I found out Jamie had one and she played one. And so I started writing specifically for the alto flute and tenor, which I thought was a really good combination of voices. They're similarly ranged, but the timbre is separate enough. You can have a real interplay in terms of counterpoint and things of that nature. So I tried to really feature that in my writing, and that's just sort of, I think that's been a constant through most of my writing over the years. It's just been overlapping voices. My favorite album of all time, and think what you want about me, but it's true, is Disintegration. I'm an enormous Cure fan, and I love all the overlapping melodies that happen in that record. And that's not really the kind of thing I aspire to stylistically, but in terms of conceptually and compositionally, I think that's a goal, a worthy goal. And so that's kind of where I've taken my writing, and it's sort of guided my compositional framework. But in terms of just being a band leader, the challenges, I think it's the same anywhere. I still don't think that we, as like a population, have really recovered from COVID. A lot of clubs closed. A lot of places I really like to go to listen and to play at are gone. And it makes me sad to think about that. The scene seems to be further and further dispersed. Um, and
Where did you like to play that closed?
well, Cornelia Street, before COVID, Cafe Vivaldi, which is right across the street, was right across the street. 55 Bar, a lot of West Village hangs that I was really into. And like those are my favorite places to listen as well. They were small, you could hear everything. I mean, you could hear everything, and you really feel like you were part of that experience.
Oh yeah, I had a weekly gig at Cafe Vivaldi in 2011.
Yeah,
It was a cool place.
yeah, I played there a bunch. I really liked it. It was a really great, like I said, a really good sense of community. You can see everybody, you can hear everything, and people come in there with all sorts of ideas. All these places, people come in there. It's not just a straight ahead thing. If you want to hear some, I mean, my stuff is pretty proggy in terms of like time signatures and non-functional harmony and stuff like that. Um, and
That's
I
why I
could
wanted
walk
to
in
ask
there.
you, do you take from
No.
the if you're playing, that music the way you describe it, do you take from, you know, progressive rock music like Rush or Yes or
So
any
I, I'm really picky with my prog. I love early Genesis. I absolutely love the like Peter Gabriel era Genesis, from Trespass on forward. I think Foxtrot is incredible. Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Those are phenomenal records. And it's among some of my favorite music is that period of Genesis. The other stuff's great too, like Duke is great and all of that stuff. But yeah, the Peter Gabriel playing flute in front of a drum set, with like, Tony Banks. It's a great combination. It's prog, but it's also very melodic. I had a hard time getting into Yes. Um, I think Roundabout's a good record, of course, but I'm not as much as into and Rush, of course. The '80s period I think is phenomenal. But I was never a big 2112 fan. I don't get into the Jethro Tull level mythology in terms of the lyrics and the story. It's a little too involved for me. But I think I love Pink Floyd. I like music that features long instrumental sections where there's interesting things happening. Um, I love Sigur Rós. I think that. the fact that I don't understand Icelandic is an asset to me as a listener because I can just sort of listen to the vocals as part of a tapestry of the whole fabric of the music. And I feel the same way about Wagner, you know, or other music as well.
Yeah, no. So talk to me a little bit about moving from is it from place to place. Like you said, you were in Denver, you were in Alaska, you were been back. Is it like in that movie? Have you ever seen what Eyes Wide Shut, the Stanley Kubrick movie?
Uh, I've seen that. That's not an Alaska thing though, is it?
No, no, no. Well, there's a jazz musician in that movie, and he goes, "Oh, you gotta
Oh,
go."
yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah, you're
He's like,
right.
"You gotta go where the work is."
Yeah,
Was it
it's
that sort of thing?
there were some personal things and so Denver was like a lapse of judgment on my in my part and it ended up having a 2 year period. I did play a lot in these places. Like when I was in Denver, basically right off the bat, I was paying my rent playing like within like a month or two of living there. Um, and it was doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, like, you know, weddings, of course, and stuff like that, but also doing gigs. There was a place on 15th Street that I used to hang out a lot called El Chapultepec, the Peck. I don't think it's there anymore. I haven't been in Denver in years. As I was leaving, there was a club called Dazzle that was just opening up, and I think that that's where a lot of people have played who go through there. I know Kneebody would play there when they went through town. Um, but I left sort of as that place was just opening up. Um, I moved. So it's also when I was in Denver, I was a graduate teaching assistant at the University of Denver for a very brief period of time. It really wasn't what I was looking for. I'm sure it's a good program. It just I was looking for something different. And so I basically took I basically took the stipend and all of the federal aid that I had gotten, and I used it to move to New York. Um, so and I did, you know, I played around here. I had a day job at Michiko Studios. I was the guy behind the desk that would take your money and schedule the, you know, but I would also you know, play restaurant gigs and stuff like that. Uh, I got accepted to NEC, and I had already been accepted before. I think I'd been invited to audition like twice. Um, and I wouldn't follow through because I was sort of daunted by the idea of like student loan debt. And the third time came around, and I just kind of said to him, like I applied there because Steve Lacy was there, and I wanted to study with Steve Lacy. And so I they were invited me out to audition a third time, and I thought to myself, you know, they're not going to do it a fourth time. Like I need to do this. So I auditioned, and it was really great. The people I went to school with were incredible. Everybody was top notch. Like all the caliber of musicians there was phenomenal. Um, and I'm really grateful for that experience. I get to study with Berganzi. I studied with Steve Lacy, Garzone, you know, a few other people. Uh, and you know, most of my classmates have gone on to do like, you know, people I went to school with have you know recorded with Beyonce, and they've toured with. I mean, like the guys in Lake Street Dive, they were undergrads while I was a grad student there. Um, and a lot of stuff. They're really creative people, really skilled creative people. I was really grateful and fortunate to be in that environment. But you finish school and they say, here's your student loan debt. Here's how much you owe. And I was like, oh God, I got to get my shit together and get a job. Um, I applied for a teaching position. Oh, so let me back up a little bit. I played cruise ships a lot, not a lot, but a few times. And one of the cruise ships I did was in Alaska, and I always thought it was so beautiful. I always thought it'd be cool to go back. So I uh, came across an announcement for a job opening. University of Alaska Fairbanks was basically looking for um, you could sort of call it a sabbatical replacement. They had somebody there that they wanted to employ full time, but that person didn't have a doctorate yet. And so they kind of laid it out for him and said, look, you know, you're not going to get a gig here until you get a doctorate. So he left for a while to do his coursework, and I filled in. I liked
What
teaching.
were you teaching at the University of Alaska?
I taught saxophone, clarinet, and jazz studies. So I led the big band, jazz combo. I taught an improv class. They have an annual jazz festival that they do. I was the director for that festival. I brought out some guys from New York to play at that. Jamie Baum came with was Jeff Hirschfield, Gary Versace, Shane Ensley, and Johannes Weidenmuller.
Are you still teaching now?
No, I learned some things about myself. I've learned that this is I'm a horrible person. I learned that I'm more interested in my own development than I am in other people's. I enjoyed teaching. I actually really did. I had an open door policy with my students. I told them if they heard me practicing, feel free to knock on the door, and some did. Uh, and I really enjoyed the teaching. But in terms of teaching at a university, the people that I was working with all had PhDs or DMAs, and they weren't. And I just had a master's degree, and they just like the guy before me, they made it clear that they weren't interested in having anybody on board long term who didn't have a doctorate because they jumped through all the hoops. Why would they employ somebody who didn't jump through all the same hoops they did? Um, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Um, I've taught privately here and there, not steadily. I have a day gig, um, and that sustains me for in terms of helping things go along. Um, I have a lot of friends who teach, and in terms of dealing with rescheduling, people who flake out, doing things like getting on the train and going across town to teach one lesson. It seems. I mean, I used to do that,
Well,
and I can.
there's nothing wrong with a day gig, because then, it takes the pressure off of the music financially, That's just
I agree with that. I will say, like, at some point in time, so after I taught, I moved here, and a friend of mine from grad school was working in a law office, like as a temp. And so she connected me with a temp agency. They looked at my resume, and they said, "We're going to stick you with a hedge fund." And I said, "Great. What's a hedge fund?" Like I'd never heard of a hedge fund. I didn't know anything about that stuff. But I walked in the door and they were paying me more money than I was making as a full-time college professor. And it was like data entry, like really basic, mindless,
has that
and
allowed, when you have a day gig, does it allow you to take the pressure off of yourself and when artistically in a sense because you're not relying on the art to, I mean, you're supplementing your income and you could just
yeah,
artistically it changes things a little bit. I'm just want to kind
it's yeah, that I mean it's yeah, so I have some I'm assuming unpopular opinions about uh so from my perspective, uh like I've had conversations with people that are like, yes, I'm a professional musician. I have 30 students, which is totally cool. But to me, that's like, okay, so you teach a lot, which is fine. It's totally cool, but it's not like you're not playing, no one's bought, you're not like writing for a living. You're not playing you're there to educate. Which again I did it. I think it's great. But I think that from my perspective, if I'm not going to have a horn in my face, and like blowing into it and wiggling my fingers, then I need to be making as much money as possible, to just make it worth my while. And having a regular steady thing has really helped that out. Uh, and so, it also I kind of treat it as a separate part of my life. I try to keep like a separation. I get up early. I practice for a couple of hours before I go into the office. I do that every day, even on weekends. I mean, I practice from 6:30 to 8:30 most days, pretty much every day. Um, longer if I can on
David Binney
weekends.
said he worked day job for 10 years. Yeah.
So David Binney, yeah, I've had several lessons with Dave. He produced my first record, and I've had this conversation with him. Yeah, he was a proofreader, which I don't think is a thing anymore. But back then, law offices and businesses that had contracts, uh, they would have people come in overnight and update legal documents. Like they would make, during the day, the lawyers would review them and they'd make little notes, things, edits that they wanted made, and proofreaders would go in and make those changes.
When you
Um,
said, well, I'm sorry, I want to go back to one other thing really quickly.
mhm.
When you said musicians have you're some you have what you would consider unpopular opinions about it. Do you think some musicians like almost look down upon musicians who also have a day gig in a sense?
I don't know. I think what it is it's an interesting feeling standing in an elevator during the morning commute and some stranger or some coworker looks over, notices I've got a saxophone case on my back, and they like, oh, so are you a professional musician? And it's like, well, what is that? Like, which sounds like a really simple question. It should be a really simple question to answer. Do people pay me to play music? Yes. Uh, I have 3 CDs that are critically acclaimed. I've had bands that at times have been made up of people that I grew up listening to, which is, a dream come true. Do I make the bulk of my living doing that? No, no. Uh, I don't play as often as a lot of people that I know. When I do play, it's, I mean, like, I was just looking at your episode history, and I mean, uh, I've played with several of those people, and some of them on, I mean, like Jarrett, uh, Walser, and usually did Billy Carrion fairly recently. Campbell Charshi, I've been playing with him for I want to say 10 or 12 years.
Well, that's how I come across certain people. Jarrett's one of my best friends, musically, and we're a very close person. I've known him since I'm in my 20s, early 20s
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
So
yeah. And I mean, I had a group with Jeff Hirschfield in it for a while. I mean, so am I a professional musician? I don't know. I'm not really concerned about the answer.
Well,
Yes,
I don't think
no.
you can really, it's more of a philosophical thing that the person might have to tackle with, but as long as you're doing what you are doing artistically, then I think
Mhm.
that's really all that matters.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm satisfied, with what I do on that level, consistently. Like the things I pursue, the things I involve myself in, and I'm constantly working at things, trying to find new ways of looking at information, whether it be, uh, you know, how to play the instrument or like a certain approach to, you know, uh, tonal sets or, even just a new way of looking at like a diminished scale or something like that. Um, it's currently, I mean, it's consistently engaging. It keeps my mind going. It keeps my spirit fed, and it makes me happy.
Let's leave it at that. That's the best way to end the podcast.
Okay,
Where can everybody find your, social media website if you want to just plug that really quickly?
sure. So my website is glennwhite.net. That's Glenn. It's the correct spelling of Glenn. I'm sorry for all of you others. Um, and my social media handles across most of the platforms is Sacred Machines. Um, And so I've been spending a lot of time on Blue Sky because I'm trying to get involved in that community and spend less time on the others right now for, political reasons, I guess. But yeah, but mostly glenwhite.net is the place to go.
Awesome.